They called her the mother of the Tudor dynasty. But before she was a queen, she was a survivor in the deadliest family feud England had ever known. Elizabeth of York, born in 1466, daughter of King Edward IV. Her childhood began in splendor, a father on the throne, a family secure. And then, everything changed. In 1483, Edward IV died suddenly. Elizabeth was just 17. Her 12-year-old brother, Edward V, was next in line. But before he could be crowned, he and his younger brother vanished into the Tower of London. The man who placed them there was their uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. He declared them illegitimate, took the crown for himself, and became Richard III. Rumors whispered through the court. The princes are dead, and the king knows why. Elizabeth's mother, Elizabeth Woodville, found herself cornered. Her sons were gone. Her daughters were pawns, but she had one weapon left, her eldest daughter's beauty and the blood of York. Across the Channel, in exile, was Henry Tudor, a Lancastrian with a weak claim to the throne. The Wars of the Roses had raged for decades between York and Lancaster. But now, Elizabeth Woodville proposed something unthinkable, a marriage between her daughter and Henry. Red rose and white rose united at last. In 1485, Henry Tudor invaded. At the Battle of Bosworth, Richard III fell, his crown plucked from the mud and placed on Henry's head. True to his promise, Henry married Elizabeth of York. It was more than a wedding. It was a political masterstroke. The new queen played her role perfectly. Her grace softened Henry's enemies. Her Yorkist blood reassured those who had fought against him. But peace was fragile. Whispers began. Men claiming to be her lost brothers, the vanished princes. One of them, Perkin Warbeck, convinced kings and nobles abroad that he was Richard, Duke of York. If it were true, it meant Elizabeth's husband had usurped her own brother. And if it were false, it was still dangerous. The rebellion shook the kingdom. Henry crushed it, and Warbeck was executed. But for Elizabeth, the shadow of the tower never left her. At court, she was loved by the people. Warm, charitable, devoted to her children. But Henry was cautious, sometimes cold. He guarded his throne fiercely, never forgetting how he had won it. Then tragedy struck. In 1502, their eldest son, Arthur, died suddenly at just 15. The hope of the Tudor line was gone. Elizabeth, grieving, comforted Henry, and together they resolved to have another child. A year later, Elizabeth gave birth to a daughter, but the joy was short-lived. She died of childbirth fever at just 37 years old. London mourned. The streets were lined with black cloth. Church bells tolled for hours. Henry was inconsolable. He never remarried. Her death left behind not just a grieving husband and children, but a legacy. Through her surviving son, Henry VIII, her bloodline ruled England for over a century. Her granddaughter, Elizabeth I, became the Virgin Queen, the most famous monarch in English history. Elizabeth of York had united a broken England, not through war, but through quiet strength, and a crown worn in the shadow of tragedy. History remembers her as the smiling queen in portraits. But behind the smile was a woman who had lived through betrayal, disappearance, rebellion, and still emerged as the bridge between two warring worlds.